Hi everyone and welcome back to the garden. So before we get started today, I just wanted to mention that it is a discount time at your local Home Depots. Typically I buy a lot of stuff in the fall, organic fertilizers and chemicals, because the chemicals sometimes go on sale a little earlier than the granulated fertilizers do. So the first thing I got is this Bonide Captain Jack's Dead Weed Brew, $2 for this ready-to-use gallon. There were 3 of them. I purchased all 3. And then I picked up this Thermacell mosquito repellent. I've never tried these, and so it's a little late now to test for mosquitoes, but it'll be fine for next year. These are regular $40. I got it for $4, 2 of them. So I start looking now immediately in fall. I typically go once or twice a week because I have a Home Depot close to me at work, and just go peruse the merchandise at the Home Depot to see what might be on sale, because you can take this stuff and store it in your garage or in a nice temperature controlled area at least, and it will last you for years to come. And so I have gone through quite a bit of fertilizer this year, and so I'm probably going to be on the lookout for more fertilizers for this coming next season. So keep a lookout. It may take a little longer in the south since y'all's temperatures may be a little higher, but up here in Ohio, we immediately, as the day fall started transitioning into colder weather. So I think we've had 40-degree temperatures already. It's really wonderful. This weekend's been really great for gardening. I got a ton done. Garden centers are also putting lots of plants on sale to clear out inventory, and so I went by Grandma's Gardens on Friday, a local garden center I've mentioned several times and showed in several videos, and I picked up a couple evergreens that were only $10 a piece. They were thread branch cypress, I think, and really beautiful. I think they'll take to some trimming if I need to, but really nice specimens for $10 a piece. And I'm looking to add that interesting evergreen interest, and so that was certainly something I was excited to find. I also found this really beautiful Japanese maple behind me. This is a Rhode Island red. And so I mentioned I wanted to add a Japanese maple here in a previous video to replace this annual mahogany splendor hibiscus here. The mahogany splendor has been gorgeous. It's getting a bit big for this location actually. So I'm going to end up pulling it up this week and replacing it with something that'll be perennial, you know, for this space that'll be there for years to come. And so I can't completely decide on placement yet, so it's probably going to go exactly where this mahogany splendor is, and it will grow up. This Rhode Island red does get 6 to 8 foot tall and wide, so it would get too big for this space, but the branching, as you can see here, is really dense, so I think it will take to pruning really well. And you can see in there the leaves that don't get as much sunlight are a little green. They are a little lighter than the mahogany splendor, but one reason I picked this is because it has such thick, like very big leaves. A lot of Japanese maples have highly serrated leaves or really thin leaves, and this one is really substantial, and I think this will look really nice over here. So I got a lot of transplanting done. I didn't do much in this area. I did pull up all of the hydrangeas, and I'll show you out front where those went. I replaced them with mango salsa roses that I had out front, and I'm not sure that I'm going to love them in this spot, but to get them in the ground until next year, this will be a place at least for storage. We'll see if they recover. They were doing really bad because they didn't get enough sunlight out there under a tree, and so you can see how a lot of this dead wood is there. And I'll probably just leave this until spring and then come through and clean up all of this dead wood then. There wasn't much of a root system on these either, so I think they have gone really downhill since they've been in so much shade. The ones that were getting more sun, like this one, don't look terrible, and I just cut a bunch of blooms off them too. So the ones that were getting a good amount of sun were still doing okay, but there might be too many roses in this spot. We have At Last behind here, which I'm considering removing. I've loved At Last for years, but they do not hold their blooms maybe for like a day and the petals fall off. So At Last is not one of my favorite roses at this point. It's a beautiful color and it smells really nice, but the fact that the blooms just don't hold very well might be a reason for me to replace them. So, or at least move them somewhere else back in the border where they're not at the forefront. We'll see. At Last also hasn't done great in my garden. It stayed pretty small. It is a smaller rose, which is nice to tuck in, but I've had it in several places, and 2 of those were transplants. I had one out front that wasn't doing good and moved it back here, and so we'll give it a little longer, and that might be a project for next fall. We'll see how they perform this year since they've had a good year in the ground. Next year will be their second full season because all of this bed space is new, so they might perk up and do a little better. We'll just have to see. I also have this beautiful white pine. It's called Hershey. And this foliage right here, or these needles, are really, really gorgeous. And it's going to be really small and stay really small. And I think I'm going to tuck it over here somewhere as well. And I think that contrast here with the red and the yellow will just be really nice for interest in this location, especially some evergreen interest. We do have these inkberry hollies here, but there's not much evergreen interest behind here. I did add a tiny boxwood right here, you can see, but behind here there's not much evergreen interest, and so we'll need a little something in here to keep the flow going. So I'm not sure where I'll stick it, but I really like it, and I'm going to start trying to find some interesting conifers to add to the garden and that stay really small, because there's a huge selection out there that stay really tiny, just to add interest over time. There's some beautiful blue ones that, you know, just that pop of blue is really nice in the garden that you can't get elsewhere with a lot of other plants. So if you're interested in little conifers, definitely check them out this time of year too, because you can find them more readily. All right, have you ever done anything and after you're done with it, you're just like, I don't know if I'll ever do this again? Well, let me tell you, I pulled up these 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 that are next to the staircase. I replaced them with the Obsession nandinas. And so this red will grow up here. It'll have new red foliage, which I think will be an interesting both texture, because it's kind of like a bamboo texture, and also color to contrast with all of these, all of this other green around here. The roots on this 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, and I know we've discussed this in a previous video, 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 don't like to be moved. And I don't know if they really don't like to be moved or they're just so difficult to move that people say they don't like to be moved. So I had to jump on the shovel with all of my weight to get through this root system several times. I've never removed a plant in my garden that was so difficult as that one. Even some of the old shrubs that I pulled up in our garden weren't as hard to remove as this 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲. So I'll take you back there and show you the root system right quick, but it almost made me to the point where I'm not sure that I'll ever plant any more 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲s in my garden. They are really beautiful. They have tended to get a little bigger in my garden than they say on the plant tag, and that's a problem when you have smaller garden spaces like mine. So I've got all these plants that I'm going to get in the ground later this week, but this is the 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 here. You can already see the shoots that it's pushing for next year, but this root is crazy. It doesn't look as bad in the picture as it did yesterday, but you can kind of see all of these were cut through, all of those roots. So those are definitely going to go in the back in the cut flower space that I'm preparing for next year, but I'm not sure where I'm going to put them yet. So I'm going to keep them wet. I think they're pretty hardy, and so they'll be fine for a few days, just sitting out on their own, and then I can get them in the ground back there where I know they're going to be forever, because they're not coming up again after I plant them wherever they're going to be. I pulled up the Lady of Shalott Rose right here and transplanted it elsewhere in the garden, and stuck the boxwood that I had in the containers right here. And I really like the weight that this brings here. And as this area gets more shady from this tree, I think that's going to be a really nice sphere here. So it's not perfect yet. As the years progress, I can groom it a little more, but it will kind of mirror this boxwoods I have over here on the other side of the fountain, right there. I also pulled up the Poet's Wife and transplanted it elsewhere. The Stormcloud Amsonia and transplanted it, or it's sitting back there with the 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 right now to put in the cutting garden. And then there's some other things in here I need to come through and clean up this area. I'm not concerned about too much of that right now. That'll probably be one of the last things I do as part of my serious fall cleanup. Will just be straighten up these beds as we enter much cooler weather. So as you're transplanting things in the garden, some things I just need to get out of the ground so I can visualize a space better. And I reuse my raised vegetable garden bed for that a lot. And so you've seen me overwinter containers in the raised vegetable garden, where right now I have some hydrangeas that I pulled up from the south side that I just stuck in the vegetable garden bed, and they look pretty rough, but it's a good mechanism to get soil immediately around the root ball of those plants as you can make space available to put them elsewhere. So I use that often, and I've got things in there now that I'll transition out to the garden as the weather continues to cool and I can find a place for them. But for now, they're in the raised vegetable bed. So this is the cypress I was telling you about from 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 in Oregon. And it says it only gets 1 foot tall and wide. Now it's already bigger than 1 foot tall and wide, but I think it can take to some pruning. If you need to prune it a little bit, I'm gonna try not to do that. But to the extent it gets any bigger than it is, I may have to come in and selectively remove some branches. And so I kind of tuck these evergreens. There's another one over there. And I stuck a boxwood that I had in a container right here. I had another boxwood, a Green Mountain, that I was gonna put here. It was a tiny one that I got for $1 at a discount plant sale. I may have to remove this last lavender. And what I would intend to do with that Green Mountain is to eventually put it in this topiary form that this one is in. And so it'll be a weighty substance that's evergreen on the other side of the driveway there. But what I may end up doing to get that boxwood some time to grow on is pot it into a bigger pot and hill it in the raised vegetable garden bed over winter. And then I can come in the spring and remove this lavender and put it somewhere else in the garden potentially. One of the reasons I'm considering removing this one lavender plant at the end is it also doesn't get as much sun as the others because it's closer to the house. This is east facing, and so the sun, it gets good sun through lunch and the shadows slowly creep out this way. And so the lavender on the closest down here doesn't get as much sun as the rest, so it gets a little bit leggier than the rest. And so if I just remove that one, that'll give me a location to put an evergreen right there that will add some nice weight in winter and still allow my beautiful lavender hedge to continue up to that boxwood. I don't think I've showed it in a video yet, but I did pull out the wee white here, and it's one of the ones I've hilled into the vegetable garden until I can find another place to put it. But I replaced it with this tiny quick fire that I showed in a video, my Proven Winter 2023 Shrubs video a while back, and I love this variety. The foliage is so dark, it's almost giving me blue vibes, especially compared to the other stuff around here. And then as we've got cooler weather, these panicles have just started turning color, and so I think this is going to be a beautiful specimen right here in the corner. You can see how much the wee white took up in this space because all the other plants are kind of spaced out a little bit based on their growing habit. And then as we transition this way, I did get the little rascal holly for Monrovia in the ground as well. It's looking really good here. I think I'm going to come through and replace, this is a yarrow that has not done well because it doesn't get enough sun, I don't think. Yarrows don't tend to do great in my garden, I've noticed over the past couple years anyway, because I think our soil just stays too moist for them and they'd like a little drier conditions. So I think I'm going to come through and replace this with some gold 𝗟𝗏𝗄𝗯, all gold, and I think that will be a beautiful mix of color. And so we've got this variegated liriope, which, see how white this is? I was talking about it in a video a while back. I think if we have the all gold here with the bright or the dark green and the red. If you haven't noticed in recent videos, I'm really going for like colorful impact of foliage here recently. That's kind of the kick I'm on. So my priority today was to come out and get all of those tiny tough stuff 𝗂𝗏s. I think they're just called tough stuff 𝗂𝗏, but they stay relatively small, transplanted from the backyard that I just showed you earlier. So I lined them up here. There's one here and then 5 right here along this way. And if they bloom really well right here, we're in the evening now, and so there's no sun, but this will get really beautiful, wonderful morning sun and a good number of hours for it. So I think it'll be a really nice part sun location for these. You can see they are still trying to bloom a little bit, but I didn't have good bloom in the backyard on them, and you can see how rough the foliage looks. Interestingly enough, they were super easy to dig up. It's almost like some of them hadn't rooted in at all. I probably could have reached down and pulled some of them out of the ground, and they've been in the ground for a year. So they really weren't liking their location. I think they'll like it more. This does have drip on it, and there's a sprinkler head right around here somewhere on the ground that sprays these flower beds a little bit. So they'll get plenty of water, I believe, and better sun, and we'll just see how those perform for the years to come. I had one extra that I planted just right here, and it gets a good block of morning sun as well. And then I came through and dug up a few hosta and planted some boxwoods. These boxwoods I got on sale at a local plant sale last weekend, and they were $1 a piece. And I've got a couple more that I can find a location for in the garden. But this is an older variety before winter gem, so I think it's called green gem. The leaf texture is really interesting. They're much more pointy. I think these do have an issue with bronzing in the winter, and it's an older variety, but for $1, hey, I will give it a try. And if these don't work out in the years to come, I'll buy some newer versions to stick in the garden. I love boxwood, but I'm becoming a little hesitant unless I'm getting a good sale on them or discount on them to add more to my garden, just because of boxwood blight is one reason. But I've added a lot of sprinter boxwood to my garden, and I've had a ferocious issue with spider mite this year on my boxwood that I've been trying to treat. Sprinter seems really susceptible to spider mite. I know Laura from Garden Answer is having that issue as well, and I'm having the same problem. Not with any of the new ones I planted, but with some of the older ones and winter gem as well. So winter gem are those right in front of my porch here. Those have had spider mite really bad this past year. And the ones that I transitioned to the garden that I showed you in the back that I pulled out of containers that were on the patio also have spider mite really bad. And so I've been trying to treat those to get that cleared up for next year, because it's really affecting how they look. And so I'm trying to find other alternative evergreens to add, but those boxwoods were $1. And so I can't beat adding a plant for $1 just to try it out and see how it performs. And the last thing over here, we added another boxwood, so these will grow up and be nice spears here and here. And then I have this little lime punch hydrangea that I planted right behind there. So hoping this will be a nice evergreen piece here to the beginning of this path on each side. And then this will get a good amount of morning sun to perform pretty well. And then directly behind there, I moved this lemon lime Nandina over that was right here and put in this fairy trail bride hydrangea that I had planted in another front bed. I transitioned it to this spot because I think this will get good morning sun. It'll be protected from winter wind and stuff. This is a hydrangea that does not bloom on new wood. So it's setting its blooms, and it has set its blooms for this coming year. You can see them there, these little things right here in the center of where the leaf connects to the stem. Those are its blooms for next year. And if we have bad winters in zone 6, those could potentially die and it won't bloom at all next year. So if this hydrangea doesn't get blooms next year, I will be pulling it up and probably giving it to my mom or someone further in the south that the blooms will definitely bloom year after year. So this is going to be a trial. It was originally rated for zone 7. They changed that to zone 6, so I think it will live here. I did have one that died last winter, but I transplanted it out really late and it was really small. So if this one lives and it blooms for me, we'll keep it. If it doesn't bloom for me, or if it doesn't live, we'll just move on to something else in this spot. So I might go out and about plant shopping this fall to find a few things here and there, but otherwise I think I'm probably done buying stuff because I'm tired of planting stuff. I need to finish getting all of the little things that I have in my plant bay area that are getting watered and have been for months in the ground on the north side. I need to finish that border. So there's lots of tiny stuff that I need to plant, but I'm ready to start fall cleanup, as I've mentioned. So after I get everything in the ground, we're going to focus on cleaning up, and I'll go bed to bed. One of the things I'm going to be doing is limbing up this limelight hydrangea behind me to start to transition it more into a multi-trunk tree form, so it will be up and won't be so floppy like immediately in the flower bed here, which it's done this year from all the rain. Roxana from Soil and Margaritas has done hers that way, and they're really gorgeous. And so there's hardly any limbs on the bottom, or there's hardly any branches on the bottom, and she's just got this really nice multi-trunk form to them. And I want to do something similar to this one to get all of the blooms up and not flopping over so much. So thank you guys for joining me, and remember, in a world full of hate, be a light. Take care, everyone. Bye.